Truth Transistors. This is a Bible study series where we will look at the big picture of the message of the Bible. In part 13 of this Bible study series, I'm going to call it Mystery Babylon, the Dragon, the Beast, and other symbolic images in Revelation. This is by no means an in-depth study of the book of Revelation. Remember, this series is more about the big picture of the Bible. But I wanted to look at some of these characters and talk about different views of who they are and what I think they are. And some of these things I'm not sure. I'm open to different interpretations. But generally, I would encourage you to read Revelation. And it's probably more important that we are familiar with Revelation than necessarily, unless the Holy Spirit, reveals it to you. But I think it's good to study and test the different doctrines that you might have and see if it fits or not. But we don't want to force our views into Revelation by any means. But I think it's good to know so that when things are happening, that we would have discernment. Again, that's coming from a place where I'm assuming a post-tribulation rapture. But the big picture of Revelation, I will just say real quickly that it is about the church versus the worldly system, that Satan is behind this worldly system, and the church is oftentimes persecuted and hated by the world. Now, we've lived in a time in which, in the United States, where we've had a semblance of freedom, and we haven't experienced much in terms of persecution, but other parts of the world still are today. And I believe that in the future, in the last days, there will be worldwide persecution of the church. But generally speaking, whatever you believe on Revelation, if you're a preterist, if you're pre-trib rapture, mid-trib, post-trib, whatever you believe, it's important to know the message of this is probably applicable to anyone, and that is to stand firm on the gospel of Jesus Christ, that God's true people will not compromise their beliefs. They will not, if somebody puts a gun to your head and says, reject Jesus, will you do it? If you are a true believer in Jesus Christ, if you're a true follower of Jesus, if you were truly born again, you will not do it. You will reject that person's request and you will get shot. So this is like in the book of Daniel, you have Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego who would not bow down to an idol, an image of Nebuchadnezzar, and they were put in a fiery furnace. Now, God saved them in that instance. But there's other cases in which Christians have been persecuted and they did not. They did not get rescued, but they are now in the heavenly realm. So this is just a quick overview of what Revelation means and how it is applicable to the church and to God's people, no matter how you interpret Revelation. I think it's important to know the basic message of Revelation, but also it's important to study it so that if it does come to pass in our lifetime and we are here, that we would have some discernment and we'd be able to say, okay, that's Mystery Babylon, that's the beast, etc. But if not, if those things are not revealed to us and we do not see those things, then that's okay. We can still get a lot out of this book. But I find it interesting. I have some ideas. I've heard some other ideas of what some of these are, and I would like to talk about them now. Starting in Revelation 12, verse 1, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, traveling in birth, and pain to be delivered. Now, real quickly, the first thing that I think about here is Israel. In Joseph's dream, he had a dream of 12 stars and the sun and the moon bowing to him. And of course, that represented his father, mother, and 12, I guess it would be 11 stars in that dream, bowed down to him. So he would be the 12th star. But anyway, that's the first thing I thought about, and that's a possibility. In verse 3, it says, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. And this tail drew the third part of stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Now, there's a few things in here. I've tried to find a place, because it's very common, and one of the things I try to do is question traditional teaching. Is a traditional teaching actually in Scripture, and is it actually say that? So one of the ideas is that Satan and a third of the angels fell as sinners. And this is a passage that a lot of people use. And it does say that it says Satan and a third part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to earth. Now, is he talking about angels here, or is he talking about Israel of some sort? Because the woman seems to be indicating Israel, or at least Judaism, because she gives birth to a child, which I assume is Jesus. It says in verse 5, and she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And so I'm pretty sure that the baby is Jesus. So the woman could either be Mary, but I think it's much bigger than that. I'm assuming the woman is Israel. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. So I'm sure a lot of people believe that the woman is Israel. I think I would say more directly that it is God's people. But generally speaking, you have this idea. We know that the dragon is Satan, as it reveals in verse 9, where it says, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So in this verse, it says his angels were cast out with him. So perhaps that is referring to the stars. And so this is kind of an interesting passage. So if the 12 stars represent all of the angels, and a third came with him, that would go along with the traditional teaching. And the 12 stars, I mean, the sun and moon, I'm not sure. And the 12 stars, I'm not sure. But I would be interested. I have not heard a lot of talk on this woman, but I'm just telling you, just from reading it, that the woman is probably Israel, and the 12 stars are probably angels, and a third of them fell with the dragon, which is Satan. And the child is Jesus. Now it says that the devil has, or the dragon has 7 heads and 10 horns. In Daniel 7, we see the fourth beast in verse 7. It says, and after this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Now, it doesn't say anything about 7 heads in this one, but it's kind of interesting to note that this also had 10 horns. But what it says about it in Daniel 7, verse 23, it says, thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of the kings are the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them. And he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times, and the dividing of time. Now we see that time frame, times, and the dividing of time, which is 3.5 years. And we notice in Revelation 12, verse 6, it says, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days, which is 3.5 years. So I am pretty convinced that this dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns is the same beast as it discusses in Daniel 7. And we will see this beast appear again here in Revelation. Now, interesting in verse 15, starting in 12, verse 15, and the serpent cast out his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Now, I find this interesting because her seed, it talked about the child, which I assume is Jesus, but the rest of her seed that came out of her have the testimony of Jesus, which I assume is the church. And so we are sort of heirs of, we're followers of Christ. So I believe the seed is the church. Well, the baby that it's talking about is Jesus. Now, Revelation 13, verse 1, it says, And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. Now, this is interesting because it's very similar to the dragon in the sense that the dragon had 7 heads and 10 horns, and there were 7 crowns on its horns. And this beast that comes out of the sea has 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon its 10 horns 10 crowns. But then it says the dragon gave the power to the beast. So perhaps the kingdom of the world takes shape the way that the dragon takes shape, since the dragon's the one that gives the kingdoms its power, the prince of the power of the air, the god of this world, so to speak. Also, it's interesting to note the animals in this beast that comes out of the sea, which is like a leopard with the feet of a bear and his mouth the mouth of a lion. Those 3 animals were in Daniel 7. That's kind of interesting that this beast has those similarities. Verse 3, And I saw one of the heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast, and who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power is given unto him to continue 40 and 2 months. Now, this is very similar to Daniel 7, as it talked about the 11th horn speaking great things, pompous things. And also it mentions 42 months here. So I believe this is all another revealing of the same thing. Now, moving down to chapter 13, verse 11. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. Now, my first instinct is to think, okay, a lamb usually represents, God's people. But then it says it speaks like a dragon, so it's probably similar to the term wolf in sheep's clothing. And he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceives them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by the sword, and did live. And he had power to give life into the image of the beast, and the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Now, I think of several things here. Now, in the book of Daniel, you have a lot of similar things that happened where Nebuchadnezzar built an image of himself for people to worship. And so I assume it's going to be something similar of this nature. I think that the 2 horns of a lamb that speaks like a dragon is probably the false prophet. Verse 16, And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Now this is, first of all, I'm not totally sure if this is a literal mark or not, but it does say that you can't buy or sell unless you worship this image. Now a lot of people get carried away on what might be the mark. I've heard different things, like in a barcode. Apparently, every scanner has a 6 in the beginning, a 6 in the middle, and 6 at the end. And every barcode is like that. And so some people think that that scanner will be on people's hand or forehead. There's also talks about microchips being put in hands or forehead, different things of that nature, which it could be. But I think it's more important to realize the mark of the beast. In order to receive it, you'd have to worship a false image. So when people are afraid of getting deceived and accidentally taking the mark, if you're a Christian, you're not going to worship a false image. Now, I also think it's interesting, as it talks about, or the number of a man is 666. In the Bill Cooper Mystery Babylon series, he has shown that according to the mystery schools, that is the high levels of the Illuminati, they believe that the number of the illumined man is 666. So that's quite interesting and something to take into consideration because this is what the Luciferians believe. So let's talk more about Mystery Babylon, shall we? In chapter 17. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show ye unto the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, and full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Now this is in direct contradiction to the other woman in chapter 12, where she was in conflict with the dragon, and the dragon tried to kill her and her seed. And in some places it talks about a virtuous woman or a virgin woman, which represents a pure church or people of God or Israel or what have you. And a harlot represents some sort of an apostasy. Now we keep reading, and we start to, this angel reveals the meaning of the mystery of the woman and the beast and that carries. Go to verse 8. It says, The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition, and they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they beheld the beast that was and is not and yet is. And here's the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Now, real quickly, a lot of people immediately think of Rome, the city of 7 hills. Some people will note that Jerusalem was set on 7 hills as well. Some other people say that it doesn't say hills, it says mountains, or it could be 7 continents. But some of the most popular views on who Mystery Babylon is some would say some sort of revived Roman Empire. Some would say the very common one is the Catholic Church. Some would say it's an apostate Israel. Some would say it's the United States. Some would say it's the European Union. Others would say it's a revived Babylon, which is in Iraq. So it would be some kind of probably an Islamic nation or something. I think personally that it's within all of those things, or it is infiltrated or has power in all of those things, because I believe that Mystery Babylon is what is explained by William Cooper in his Mystery Babylon series. That is, this Luciferian secret societies, the mystery schools, which is rooted in the belief that man was held prisoner in the Garden of Eden by an unjust and vindictive God until Lucifer, through his agent Satan, wanted to free mankind with the gift of intellect, knowledge, so that they too might become as gods. This is the foundation of the belief system of this Luciferian doctrine, and they are in many secret societies, which are collectively known as the Illuminati, which means illumined ones, and they want to take over the world. So I believe that Mystery Babylon, which is rooted in the mystery religions of ancient Babylon, is the Illuminati. So back to verse 9. And here's the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits, and there are 7 kings. 5 have fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he comes, he should come a short space. Now, I've heard a couple of good arguments for this. One would be, or a few, one would be that the 5 that have fallen are Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Greece, or Media, Persia, and Greece. The one that is Rome, and the one that will be for a short time is the Holy Roman Empire. And the 8th is one of the 7 that comes in. And another view is that it's talking about Roman emperors. This is a preterist view, that it's talking about 5 Roman emperors leading up to Nero, I guess. And then 1 is, and then 1 should come shortly after that. So there's that one, and then another view is that these are all future. I think the best one that I've heard is the 5 kingdoms are kingdoms on the earth, like Egypt, Assyria. That's an interesting one. And verse 11, and the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goes into perdition. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings, 1 hour with the beast. Now, this could be 10 future kingdoms. If the first 7 is talking about kingdoms that were leading up to John's day, and 1 that would come shortly after, then the 10 kings could be future kingdoms, or it could be 10 kings that exist simultaneously. The preterists would believe that there were 10 Roman emperors coming after John. 13, these have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. So these 10 kings I have the sense that they will be ruling at the same time and will come together to give strength to this beast. That these are not 10 consecutive kings, but 10 kings that rule on the earth at the same time. And it makes me think of the statue in Daniel 2, where the last kingdom is the toes, the feet, the iron mingled with clay with 10 toes. Now, it doesn't say that the 10 toes are 10 kings, but I find that interesting, a connection. But it says, these have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. He shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is the Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called, and are chosen and faithful. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth are people and multitude and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which you saw upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God has put it in her hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give their kingdom unto the beast, unto the words of God shall be fulfilled. So this is interesting now. If the woman that rides the beast is Mystery Babylon, then this final kingdom will turn against this woman. Now, maybe the woman herself is not Mystery Babylon. Maybe it's because it says that was what was written on her forehead. Anyway, but somehow this apostate woman is hated by the world at the end times, which is, an interesting thing. Now, if the woman is Mystery Babylon and is the Illuminati, then is it possible that this final kingdom will be heroic because it will destroy this Illuminati? And thus people will think, oh, this is a good thing. And verse 18 says, and the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. Now, city could either mean a literal metropolitan area, or it could just mean an organized system that rules over. So that would fit also if it is the Illuminati. However, it says that when Babylon has fallen, that mighty city, it says the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buys their merchandise anymore. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all thine wood and all the manner, etc. Merchants of these things which were made rich by her shall stand afar off for the fear of her torture, weeping and wailing. Now I kind of wonder if the merchants it's talking about that were made rich by her were people that sold out to the Illuminati to get wealthy and were used by them. Just an interesting thought. But for in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster and all the company in ships and sailors and as many as trade by sea stood afar off and cried when they saw the woman of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? Now this seems to indicate a metropolitan area. Now it's interesting to note that the United Nations is based in New York City. So could it be that it's talking about the real city, which I think is empowered by the Illuminati? Another common view is the Vatican, which is very popular view of who Mystery Babylon is. And a third one that I've heard is by Chris White, who believes that Mystery Babylon is the end times apostate Jerusalem. So those are three very possible, and I'm sure there's others as well. But my thinking on this has more to do with where the power source of the Illuminati sits at any particular time. So during the time of Christ, it was in Rome. So, and perhaps at a time it was in the Vatican, and now it's in probably New York City. So these are all things we can think about as well. So in the future, it may not be in New York City. It may be somewhere else. But anyway, this is a lot of speculation. You know, I don't claim to have all this figured out, but just remember what I said earlier in this video, that Revelation can be applicable to the church. Just think about it as the church and the world system is against the church and wants to destroy the church. And at times, it seems like the world is more friendly towards the church. And then at other times, it seems that the world will persecute. So this has already gone longer than most of my Bible study videos, so I apologize. This was a very difficult one, and I by no means have this figured out, as you can see. But hopefully, this gave you something to think about. Thank you, and God bless.